What's going on, Price?
Not a whole lot. Tonight we've got four great individuals this evening speaking. All four are important people in regards to recruiting at the recruiting for college basketball. All four are obviously figures that have had a lot of success in what they do. I'm waiting for one of them to get on, Adam. I think he's a little bit behind. He's having some issues, I think, due to a power outage out on the East Coast. So I'm just going to wait for him to get in. But until then, we'll probably go ahead and get started. We'll go ahead and get started with Dain Ervin. I got a chance to get to know Dain actually this year. Heard a lot of great things about him before, but got a chance to meet him this year actually in Louisiana at a high school tournament. Exchanged information, have stayed in contact. A very important figure across the country in regards to grassroots and high school basketball. And has done a great job of being an advocate for HBCUs. I think a lot of times some guys don't try to take the road of helping HBCUs, and in the short time that I've known Dain, he's made sure that he's always reached out, tried to help out in regards to maybe trying to send a kid to an historically black college. So that means a lot to me personally. But without further ado, I'll go ahead and allow Dain Ervin to speak.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dain Ervin, originally from New York City, in Houston, Texas. I started this industry 10 years ago. How ironic for the things that we're going through now in this nation as a whole. I personally saw that, issue in this particular field that stuck out to me like a sore thumb. I was in Las Vegas. We all, if you've been there, we all miss it. It was a great time that you had an abundance of talent from all levels in one spot. You crisscrossed from Henderson to North Vegas. You saw a bunch of talent. In that process of me doing that, I immediately saw an absence of representation for people like myself. I ran across coaches that recruited me that were at new schools, some of my same schools. I ran across my peers that I played against, played with, that were now in the coaching. And the representation was there, but it was no representation from an evaluation standpoint. And I really harp on that now from a standpoint that, we dominate the NBA. We have enough players, we have enough coaches, but we don't have enough general managers. We don't have enough director of basketball operations. We don't have enough owners. And instead of just being that guy on Twitter who just runs his mouth, he's poking the bear, he's throwing a rock and hiding his hand, I wanted to do something about it. So I literally got on my grind, and I sought out all the events. No representation. I didn't have a big machine. I didn't have, no offense to ESPN or Rivals or 24/7. At the time, you had Scout. I didn't have any of those as my backbone. All I had was my word, my representation, and my reputation to go forward with. And I just stuck to my guns because any and everyone that knows me, especially, I played as well. I played at every level that a kid may experience. So when you talk about being qualified or certified to do something, again, I'm from New York City, so I came up when New York City mattered. I went on to the greatest prep school in the world, Northfield Mount Herman, and we had great success there. So I played at prep school. I initially went to an HBCU. I went to Hampton University. I played for Steve Murfeld. So I had that experience. I went on to junior college. It didn't work out at Hampton. I wanted to get re-recruited. So I took myself to Angelina Junior College. So you talk about Region 14. Anyone who knows junior college basketball, that historically has been one of the greatest conferences in junior college basketball. So I had that experience. And then I went on from there to Texas, Southwest Texas, which now is Texas State. And I mean, that's a PWI experience. So I had that experience. So I graduated from the game in 2002. I left it alone. I mean, we all have our secret conversations with the basketball guards. And one of the deals that any and every player should make is you want to get an education from this experience. And I did that. So when I finished my deal with the basketball guys, I figured it was all over with. And I never thought in a million years that I would get to the space, because I went on to become a juvenile probation officer in Houston. I was traveling around the world extensively because I, at the time, was working with Continental Airlines, which is now, you know, they went under and was merged with United Airlines. But I'm traveling the world and I'm locking up kids. But every friendship that I had, every relationship I had, it always came back to basketball. And so many people in so many ways just kept saying to me, you have too much to give to just be running around locking kids up. It dawned on me a little bit. But again, fast forward to 2010, I'm in Las Vegas with a good friend of mine, Kamani Young, who's a coach at Connecticut now. He was coaching with the New Heights program in the Adidas Super 64. And for me, that's when the light kind of clicked and it took off. As I talked to many of the elders in the business, whether it's, you know, Van Coleman, Clark Francis, Frank Burleson, Tom Kachowski, when I talked to them about their start at that time, many of them only had 2-3 schools. At the time, the only prominent person of color that was on a platform was John Stovall. And I ironically ran into him at a Popeyes in Augusta. And it was literally just me and him in there. And I asked him, I said, you know, how many schools did you have when you started? And he was like, 4. I knew I was onto something because with all the deep relationships I had across the country, before I even sent out an invoice, I had 27 close friends that were at different universities and at different levels. And again, they all respected my basketball acumen. So that was kind of one of the early signs that I knew what I was doing. And as I hit the road and I started to cover all the things that I covered, there was no bias. You know, I do work for Nike basketball now, but at the time, and this is probably how my reputation became what it was, is I covered Under Armour, I covered Adidas, I covered non-shoe programs. I want to say, we on here with the Big Shot guys, I want to say I went to a Big Shot event, I think in Aiken, South Carolina, and that's when I actually first saw Jalen Fisher and Chris Chioza. They were playing with Team Thad at the time. So I was covering everything and bringing that information back to the people that needed it, because the unfair setup that I think a lot of college coaches at the Division I level I speak of, the old calendar was so unfair to you guys from a standpoint that you had less than 30 days to make an evaluation on a player. Yet I have 365 days out of the year to see a kid, get to know a kid, and then we wonder why the transfer rate is where it is. And it was something that I initially found that out as well, and I took advantage of that. I knew coaches couldn't be everywhere. I just knew it. So I had to do my part of getting as much information and much honest information. I'll be the first to tell you, I'm anti-handler. I'm not talking to no one's handler. I'm not talking to somebody who's screaming, it's my kid. I'm trying to get to the parents. I'm trying to get to that guardian that's supervising this child. I'm not talking to fans. I'm not talking, I mean, no disrespect to even coaches, because when it comes to decision making, especially at the college level, as I learned from one of my mentors as well, great Rob Lanier that's at Georgia State, you have the recruiting phase and you have the decision phase. And I think from my evaluation space, I try to help college coaches get around the recruiting phase and get to the people that's going to help that kid make a decision. So over the time, again, started my service in 2010, ran into a lot of great people, Ryan Silvers of the world, Dinos, Trignosis. I know many people have a feeling about them, but these were a lot of the advocates for me when I first started. And I believed in what they stood, and they believed in me. So covering those events, and then literally 2 years in, how relationships work. Someone that I met years ago as a shoe rep was pretty much, he was a pretty big deal at Nike basketball. We had a conversation, and I applied for a position that I actually did not get. But my presentation as I came in, the PowerPoint, I mean, I came with a suit. I was dressing the part. They were impressed. And at that time, Texas was bubbling seriously. You talking about, this is when De'Aaron Fox and Marquise Bolden, all those guys, Carson Edwards were coming through, and they had no representation in the Texas region. So with that being said, they extended the position to me, and I've been with Nike ever since 2014. So with that time, still keeping my dedication to my own scouting service as well as working with Nike basketball. It also helped elevate me to the personnel director with John Lucas at the NBPA Top 100. So all I could tell anyone, just stay dedicated to what you're doing. Be honest at all times. I'm not, again, as I mentioned, I'm not a fan of these kids. I understand you guys. My relationship is going to be with you guys because at the end of the day, if I get a relationship with a parent after 3-4 years, that parent is gone. There's no reason to take my service or to hear anything I have to say. To just let you know how small the world is. And then I kind of chuckled about it because I actually forgot. But a good friend of mine, Ira Miller, who played at McNeese State, was telling me how he knew Ryan because his dad was assistant coach at McNeese State. So as you see and you learn in this industry, you know, relationships are so key and they're so vital, and it's keeping the right ones by your side. We all know what's good for you and we know what's bad for you. And I just think it's so important that when you're talking about evaluating, it's keeping those good relationships on top of always being honest and always just trying to put your best foot forward. I don't know if you want me to keep going, Ryan, but
if you had anything else you wanted to add, but I think you put everything together. I know what we had talked about, so you put everything together. Tonight, we're going to do things a little bit different than what we've done in the past. We're going to have each speaker go ahead and give an introduction of themselves and then talk a little bit, and then we'll go into the question and answer session for all the speakers. So just have your questions set for at the end, and then we'll go like that. I think we're still waiting on Adam, but our next speaker is a guy that I've gotten to know over this, several years. He has done an outstanding job with bringing recognition to junior college basketball and international basketball. He's been a guy that's personally has been a saving grace. Has helped me quite a bit from time to time on some guys, giving me the thumbs up or the thumbs down on them. And I appreciate it. He's sent me some, or helped send me some good ones over this way. Brandon Goble of JUCO Advocate. He is a guy that I think has done a great job. He's expanded from not just having recruiting service. Now he has a big time junior college event during the summertime, as well as a showcase in the fall. So Brandon, floor is yours.
I appreciate it, man. And so we're just doing intro now and then other subject stuff later. Okay.
Well, no, you get the intro and then you can do your subject.
Roll into my get on my soapbox.
Yeah.
So I'm Brandon, and I run JUCO Advocate. We also own the brand Verbal Commits now, and so I got, I'm the pup in the group. I've been doing this as this business of JUCO Advocate for 4 years now. And I used to work in the corporate world and got into basketball doing data and analytics for a Division I school, and was just doing it as kind of a side hustle for fun, writing scout, taking a lot of questions, kind of breaking down a lot of the numbers and stuff as things like advanced statistics were kind of starting to really kind of filter their way into college basketball and things. And that's kind of where I really got started. And it's such like a fortuitous way that I wound up here. A lot of what I do now starts with really the first player that I ever tried to help was a kid named Solomon Heine that was in the military, and he was in the Air Force for 6 years. He was a combat veteran out of California. And so when he wanted to walk on at the school I was at, they weren't looking for walk-ons or anything. And I said, hey man, I don't know anything about anything, but I'll work you out and film it. and we'll just use social media and a few people that I know and see what we can do. And he ended up walking on at a junior college, ended up starting there, and then said, hey, can you help me get some exposure for recruiting? Because he was 24 at the time after being in the Air Force for 6 years. So he was complicated because everybody looked at him and said, that's not a kid. That's a grown-ass man. And so what's he doing here? And if you didn't know the story and the background and stuff, you weren't going to recruit him. So worked on that, worked the heck out of social media, got him taken care of, and he went on to Evansville, and then grad transferred and finished up at UTRGV and had a great career. And so once he went on to his 4-year school, I kind of reached out to a few of the people that I had built some relationships with just through his recruiting, and said, hey, I feel like there's still a lot of kids out there that have unique stories, unique backgrounds that could use some help. And so JUCO Advocate literally started as a Twitter handle, and it kind of blew up pretty quick from there. And so, we have the scouting side of stuff that we do. We have events that we do domestically. We have a large nonprofit organization. A lot of the things that we do are always everything we do is totally free to kids. We do the Undiscovered Showcase in Chicago. Used to be the Evan Turner Showcase in Chicago there. So we work with NBA guys on that. And then we go overseas, go to Africa and run free camps over there and help kids get to college. Go to the Caribbean, same thing. Do some media stuff, TV show stuff that's going on right now, and podcasts and once we took verbal commits under our brand and kind of expanding that and rewriting that software, and it's just kind of been this thing where it never really had like a set direction other than to help. The idea was to go find those kids that just needed help, and there's a lot of them, and do what we could do, and it just kind of just keeps going this way and that way and everything else. And if you said, hey, 10 years from now, what is what you do look like? I don't know. If you'd have said 3 years ago, you're going to be bouncing around Africa and, sleeping outside and running camps in 110 degree weather and stuff like that, I'd have said, you're nuts. But here we are. So we just really kind of try and do things different and help as much as we can. And, on the kids and the coaches and expand relationships and all that sort of thing. So with that being said, one of the things that I kind of wanted to touch on in this is, anybody that's on my side of the business knows that when we talk to coaches, we're always kind of playing back and forth, right? Coach says, this is what I'm looking for. This, I say, okay, this is what fits what you need and things like that. And it's this give and take, but at the end of the day, I think a lot of times coaches can find themselves maybe pivoting back to what they find comfortable. Things that they know, it's an extraordinarily stressful job, where you think, okay, this recruit that I got to bring in, they got to do X, Y, and Z, or, I'm going to, we're not going to win and coach is going to be mad or, whatever. It's that there's a lot to unpack when you're looking at a recruit. And so one of the things that I always preach a lot of times is trying to talk guys through getting out of their comfort zone and getting more comfortable, being creative in recruiting. There's a lot of guys that everybody knows about, and go recruit those guys and see who you can get and all that sort of thing. But when you're fighting 20, 30 schools for the same kid, you got to get creative, and you've got to find different ways to find impactful players that affect your program in a positive way, that are good kids, that are good ball players that fit what you do and all that sort of thing. And basketball is the second most popular sport in the world. It's the fastest growing sport in the world. And that, because of that, not only domestically are there kids everywhere, worldwide, there are kids everywhere. And that is only going to grow. And so getting creative with how you go out into the world to look for recruits is something that's you're going to have to do. You're going to have to go out and create relationships and start to really understand the context of, where these kids are playing. If you're looking at some kid overseas, if you're watching a kid in France, how do you evaluate that the context of what they're playing in? How do you develop relationships so that you have different people that you can talk to about whether or not, they're good kids, or, whether they fit your program culture wise and all that sort of thing. And it's a lot easier than you would think. I know it's intimidating. I know there is a lot of the fear of the unknown, especially when you think, well, I can just go down the road and see 20 kids. Why would I look, at some state that's, why would I go to Maine? If there's some kid in Maine, go to Maine, or watch somebody in Maine. Because I think what you'll find is that once you step out of your comfort zone, there's this whole other world of basketball that a lot of people have not really put the effort into seeing. And we've gotten to see that when we go overseas. One of the things we do when we go to Africa and we help kids get to school, like we've had really good success with how good, a lot of these kids are that are coming over here. I mean, one of them is an NBA prospect now. And people say, well, how do you evaluate a player when you can't watch them play against anybody? Because that's something that coaches always say, well, who are they playing against? And that's a question that immediately limits your ability to get creative in that recruiting process, because the second that you worry about that right away, you've immediately turned your brain off to opening it up to the possibilities of how good this kid could be. So like when we go to Africa, I don't have a bunch of like studs for them to play against. We bring our trainers that work with NBA guys and stuff, and they'll get in some run with them, but that's not going to really show me. So the very first day that we go over there, we put the basketballs away and we turn their brains off, because they all get overly excited if they know somebody's here that has scholarship opportunities for them. They can't walk and chew gum, let alone play basketball. So we put the basketballs away, we get out soccer balls, and we play dodgeball. And I was a college water polo player, so I can whip that thing at them. And you're just watching and you're having fun, and the kids turn their brains off and they're having fun and they're having a good time. But then when you step back and they're all playing, you see who can jump, who can cut, who can drop their button move, who can catch, who can do all of these different things. And you say, well, I can teach that kid to play basketball. What I can't teach is to do all of those physical things that you're doing right now. And then you spend time with them and you say, you know what, this is a great kid. This is a kid that if I say, I need you to give me, 10 hours today of focusing on this one thing, they say, yeah, I'm in it, coach. Like, let's go. And so, not that anybody's going to go over and do that. I mean, that's what my job's for. Right. But for then people to sit back and say, okay, these players that are coming over, or these kids from, Chicago, even in Chicago, there are under the radar kids that don't get seen because they don't play in the right stuff, or they don't play on the right team, or they don't have the right guy and all that kind of stuff. There are players everywhere. And the players that pop up now and everybody goes, man, where'd that kid come from? And they're not really that big of a secret. It's just people got to open their eyes, and they have to see that there is something out there, that the unknown is not as scary as it may seem. You're going to always hear the horror stories of the misses. There's a coach that says, what, I won't take a European kid anymore. I had a European kid 3 years ago, and he was soft, and he didn't do this and he didn't do that and whatever. Well, you probably had a kid from Kansas that was soft at one point, that didn't do this and didn't do that and whatever. And it's really no different. So, I really, really emphasize with everybody that find ways to expand that recruiting base, find ways to go out and find the next whatever, the Drew Cuxhausen hanging out in Western Nebraska that nobody wanted to go see, that was, arguably the best shooter in Division I basketball last year. Mo Wagner went to Michigan because he sent an email to Coach Beeline. He had some other schools kind of talking to him and stuff, but he sent an email. Mo Wagner was not that hard to find if you go out and you talk to the right people and you see what he's doing and you talk to him and all that sort of thing. So it's those guys are out there. It takes a little bit of extra work. It takes getting out of that comfort zone. It takes talking to a lot of people, being comfortable with really making sure that the circle that you've created around you are trustworthy people, and go out there and see what's out in the world. Cause I'm telling you, like some of the places that we've been, the amount of the talent that's just walking around, with nobody paying attention is unbelievable.
Brandon, thank you so much, man. Next up, I think we got Adam. Are you there? Adam, you on? Probably have to get.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Adam was having some technical difficulties due to the storm, I guess, on the East Coast. But I'll be honest. I just got the chance to meet or talk with Adam last week. Reached out to him about talking about recruiting, and he had no hesitations in regards to speaking on it. And over the last week or so, we've been able to develop pretty solid conversations, and it's a relationship that I'm hoping that will continue to develop as time goes on. But Adam is with ESPN. He's a national recruiting analyst for ESPN. And I think I got a fact here. Is this true? Did you coach Marlon Guild? Adam. Adam, you there?
Yeah. Sorry. So here's the long and short of my current situation. So we've got. I know I was supposed to do a little introduction on my background. You probably didn't expect the introduction on the tropical storm background. So, we had a storm up here today. I live with my wife and my 2 kids. We lost power, and so we lost internet. So I'm literally right now in a car in my sister's driveway trying to mooch off her. Did I lose you?
No, you're here. You're there, Adam. We hear you.
Okay. Yeah. So I apologize that this was a little late. I'm trying to improvise here and make it work the best we can. So I will, so my basic story and first of all, the caveat of, this internet situation out of the way. First of all, I want to thank you for having me. I know this platform has been gaining a lot of momentum, especially over the last few months, and I was really, really flattered that you asked me to come speak. I know you asked me to talk a little bit about my background. I started as a manager. I was a manager at UConn, right in kind of the heyday of the UConn program. The 4 years that I was an undergrad there came in between the shift. So I was there from 2000 to 2004. And really it was, UConn was at its peak then. Was there when Mecca Okafor and Karan Butler and Ben Gordon. And so got to see those guys. But more importantly for me, I got to learn because I wanted to coach. And so after I was done being a manager, I went and I started coaching. I did a couple of years of Division III, and then I was on the road Division I when I was 24 years old. Got a pretty brutal introduction to the business. At 25, been at the University of Hartford for 1 year, working for Larry Harrison. We improved the year before I got there. It finished last in the league. Our year there, we moved up to 3rd in the league. Had nothing to do with me, quite frankly, but we got Coach of the Year, and then 2 weeks later we were fired. So it was a brutal introduction to kind of the business, and from that point in time, I started kind of 3 different things. I started coaching at the prep school level. I started scouting with Marty Blake, who as a director of scouting for the NBA. And at the same time, I started a recruiting service in my home region in the Northeast. So kind of organically let those 3 paths go where they would. The recruiting one really, really picked up. And then ESPN hired me a few years later, and I've been with ESPN for the last 10 years. That's, that role first began from New England down to the DMV. And we're now, Paul B. and Cardi and I for our ranking purposes. And then, of course, I have my own individual scouting service that continues to cover the Northeast. So I've been really fortunate to be able to experience the game at a lot of different levels. I wasn't good enough to play Division I, but I knew I wanted to be involved in the game, and I loved the game. I was very fortunate to learn firsthand what coaching was like, to be able to experience scouting at the NBA level, learn from those guys, and then be work with some great people in the recruiting landscape. So. I don't want to be redundant here about what anybody has already talked about. So, Ryan, have people already kind of addressed recruiting right now in the pandemic, that kind of thing?
No. No. Can you hear me, Adam? Can anybody hear me?
Can you say that again?
I said no.
Okay. All right.
Nobody.
Yeah, I got you. Okay. So what I would tell you is that I'm going to approach it from that standpoint, because that's the question I get from the college coaches that I work with most consistently. Is everybody's kind of saying, hey, what can what are you hearing out there? What are people doing that's different or unique? And I think for the most part, listen, everybody's on Zoom. I'm the only guy who can't figure out how to be there on time with the amount of Zoom that's going on right now. But everybody's FaceTiming the kids. I think one of the things that's interesting with Zoom, especially when more people were in quarantine, was the amount of coaches. I heard some really good stories about the coaches who were utilizing their family while they were home with their family in the Zoom as a way to kind of bond with prospective student athletes and their families. Introducing a prospect's mom to a coach's wife, that sort of thing. I saw a lot more connect. I think it in a very impersonal medium. It allowed for a little bit more of a personal touch. Obviously, I've seen a lot of these drone tours and stuff like that. But I'll give you, kind of a couple things that I've recommended people do, college coaches that is, who are recruiting this time. I think, for one, especially if you still don't have your team back, I think this is a great time to be acquiring new skills. So whether you're reading about something or training yourself in something, but I think that specific to recruiting, I think you've always got to be able to speak the prospect's language. And right now their language is spoken over social media. And it's not Twitter anymore. It's Instagram, it's TikTok, whatever. So I think that it's an absolute necessity that someone on your staff, if they don't already have the knowledge, educates themselves as to how to utilize social media. My recommendation for every Division I staff in the country is that anytime you have a non-coaching position, that person needs to be incredibly well-versed, not just in video, but also in the edits or the graphics that the kids like to use, because those are the things that resonate with the kids. And so if there's anyone on this call who's looking to break into the business, that's what I tell people all the time. If you're hiring a GA or a support staff position, I think those people, just as important as their basketball knowledge right now, it's when I was coming up the ranks, when I got my first GA job at Hartford that eventually turned into going on the road, being able to cut up video was the skills then. Well, now it's about being able to and being able to produce the type of content that really resonates with these kids. So I think as a staff, making sure that you have ideally multiple guys in case you have some attrition at some point who are adept in that and really able to speak that language and communicate in that way and create the type of content that's going to resonate with these kids. I think that's a really important thing. The second thing that I have recommended to college coaches is to use this time to really do your due diligence. I think a lot of the mistakes that I see, everybody cites everybody's very interested about the basketball, who can do dribble, pass, and shoot under what circumstances. But I don't know that, one of the things that I think is very interesting is the variance between the amount of kind of research and due diligence that, say, an NBA scout will do on a prospective draft pick versus a college coach will on a guy he's recruiting. And mind you, like the NBA scout, there's like a 1 in 60 chance that they're going to draft that guy in one of the 60 picks in the NBA draft. A college coach is basically picking who they want to assign, who they want to offer a scholarship to. So there's not nearly the same randomness to it. And yet the college coach doesn't do anywhere near the same amount of due diligence. So I think while things are paused right now, and while everybody's trying to evaluate off these live streams and communicate over Zoom, one of the things that I would be doing is trying to do due diligence, kind of because there's always somebody who you can talk to, who will appreciate the phone call, where you can get new information. And the best recruiters I know are the ones who really understand how to get that information, have a pulse for what's going on all around the prospective student athlete that they're trying to pursue. Because ultimately that's going to play such a huge part. And everybody I think knows this, but those intangibles and that character piece is going to play such a huge part in whether or not that kid lives up to the potential that he's shown. Because whatever his basketball skill set and athletic makeup is right now, all that is one data point basically. And what we're trying to do is plot, and project data points for the next 4 years. So we want to know if that's going to be a linear progression or if it's going to be just a flat, line with no progression. And I think more often than not, 9 times out of 10, the determining factor in that, after you've assessed kind of the basketball and physical skills, is the character piece. So I think that the college coaches should really be digging in more and trying to do as much due diligence as they can on that front. There's a lot of different things I could go into, but I think one of the things we'll try and, if there's questions, I'd be happy to jump in and answer those.
Yeah, Adam, we're going to do questions after Kevin speaks. We'll open it up for questions then. If you're going to be able to continue to have some good service. No,
we're gonna try. We're gonna try.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Adam. Well, our next speaker, our last speaker for the evening, young man and gentleman. I'm not going to call him young man, but a guy that I have had the pleasure of knowing for quite some time. I would definitely be honest with you, consider him like a family member. His father, my father, played at Virginia Tech together. I don't want to give away the years because I think my dad's on here, but it was quite a few years ago. They played at Virginia Tech, and me and Kevin have gotten a chance to know each other over the years. He's been a guy that I've been able to piggyback off ideas with some guys that I'm not always able to see on the East Coast. And he actually, to be honest with you, helped me out in a tough time for myself professionally when I was out of coaching for a year. Gave me an opportunity to help him out a little bit with big shots. And I'm very grateful for him for that. But Kevin Schneider, COO, National Recruiting Director for Big Shots, has done a great job of helping the cause, especially on the East Coast, with grassroots basketball. And I'm going to go ahead and let Kevin speak right now.
Rob, appreciate you having me on, man. And can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. Yeah, man, we go way back. Obviously your dad, Tick, my dad played together at Tech. They got stories for days, on the things they've done and playing career, coaching career. And, with what we've done with Big Shots over the years, I think, Dain, you touched base on it. It's all about the relationships, what we do, and I think, we realize that every day, even going through this pandemic right now, the relationships of getting teams to come to certain events in certain areas is not the easiest thing, but they trust the relationship, the process, and everything we're doing, and it's been able to work out over the course of July. And we have, another big event coming up this weekend. But, talking about recruiting, recruiting's the thing where, it's the foundation of what we do. Background and kind of what Big Shots is. We started in 2006. We've been doing it for 15 years now. We've had over 14,000 players get scholarships, various levels. A lot of guys on this call, east to west. We've have relationships with those guys through either coaching or playing. My dad, obviously, I run Big Shots with him, Jeff Schneider, and he coached with some Hall of Fame caliber guys. Started with Tubby Smith. He's been with Kevin Eastman, J.D. Barnett, Jim Larinaga was his first hire at Bowling Green. So he's learned from some of the best, and we operate our company like we would a college basketball program. I've heard, Adam touching base on the social media piece, the graphics. I mean, that's all stuff we do on a daily basis, and trying to communicate best with players. And I think we've been able to do that, having relationships east to west, coaching and playing east to west. I grew up in Phoenix. And, when, my dad resigned coaching, we formed teams, and we had 3 AAU teams. Our first team was, the Punks kind of took care of that top team we had. The second team was fair, and the third team wasn't great, but they enjoyed the experience. And the guy that coached that team ended up being the VP of Dick's Sporting Goods, and he coached his son. And so in 2005, his son tragically died. And in 2006, he called us and said, "Hey, look, I had more fun with my son that year, playing on the AAU circuit. I'd like to start a tournament in his honor." And we were, honored to have the opportunity to do that. We said, "Great, let's do it. What would you want to call it?" He said, "Let's call it Big Shots." And that's how it started in 2006. And during that time, we only had the recruiting service going. So we had that in 2001 to 2006, started the tournaments. And our first tournament had 19 teams. We had John Wall, we had Kimba, we had some talented dudes come through that first event, and that was in Myrtle Beach. And, we've grown to now over 2,000 teams annually, and all up and down the East Coast. But, I would say with everything going on, I thought Dain had great points about the relationships, Brandon talking about the players. There's so many players out there now more than ever. And then with Adam, what he's talking about, I think adapting to recruiting now is so key. I mean, when Goble went down on March 13th, we had to adapt on our end. We canceled 40 events, man. I mean, 40 events on that, but we knew we had to adapt, and we're here to help the coaches. So, we're always thinking the best way to help you in recruiting. Last weekend, Jeff stayed at home and watched the Zoom. I know Baller TV's been iffy, and I'd be the first to tell you I've been all over them to get it better with the new technology they have. But like the live streaming, so valuable now. I think data is key. We're collecting data for every single player that comes in, CDC reasons and other reasons, obviously for recruiting. But adapting to the recruiting is key. Social media, that's where guys are communicating. We've really put a lot of emphasis on the Instagram. I jumped on Twitter when it first came out, and that was, 2010, 2011. And it's always changing. So, George Ravlin, a line we always use with what we do is just, he had that line where you always got to be changing, and Kevin Eastman would always talk about that with the Nike Skills Academy. Then they'd switch to something else. And I know, Van's on here and several Nike guys, obviously Dain. And, I think you're always got to be changing. You don't want to get stale on what you're doing, because I think that technology is always constantly changing. The players are cycling through. There's new coaches coming up through the system. So, the ability to adapt and quickly adapt is key to recruiting right now. And I also think going into certain areas is, something we've been fortunate. We ran the Desert Duel out in Phoenix. You guys probably remember that. We had good food with P.F. Chang's and all that, but we had a lot of talent. I know Ryan Silver's on the call. He's doing an outstanding job out west. And, I think adapting to different regions, I see Justin Gainey on the call. He went from Arizona to Marquette. As you're moving around the country, it's important to get to know the guys that know the players within that area. When we transition into DC, our first guys we got together with were Keith Stevens and Damon Handon. Those were the two guys that we, grew close with, and Curtis Malone at that time. We ran a DC Assault event, and that kind of, broke us into DC. We go into Philly, Kamal Yard, obviously does an outstanding job. Rob Brown, Kalo Elite, all the top programs. I think it's just important to get to know who knows the players, who has the players in those various regions. And if you do that, then you can quickly make a presence with what you're doing. So, that's something we've done. We've been fortunate to be able to host events up and down the East Coast, and it's all about the relationships, man. I mean, I can tell you that that's the foundation, and then the other thing we do is we don't fluff. I see a lot of stuff in this business now, man, on guys that, put stuff out for different reasons. And, our reputation means too much, to put something out on a player that isn't that level. If we say a player like Jonas Adu right now, a 7-footer out of Liberty Heights, he's blown up, he's getting offers by the hour almost. He's the real deal. And when we say a guy can play, he can play. A kid named like Grayson Allen, or a John Moran, or Zion coming up, or, Carl Towns at 8th grade, or Jalen Brown at 15 when he had not much recruitment going. So I think a lot of it is, be honest with your evaluation, trust your eye. I think that's a big thing in recruitment is trusting your eye. If you have questions about a player, I know like Adam talked about doing background checks on guys. It's hard, man, when you're in a Zoom call or you're doing the live stream to get a true evaluation. But, there's guys probably on the ground that can help you with that. Obviously at our events or different events we're here to help and figure out, who really can help you in certain regions. And, if there's guys that can help you nationally, then, reach out to them as well. But, be glad to answer any questions, about any players. We love finding the sleepers for you, the guys that are nobody's on early on that we can, help put you, in contact. Previews before events, post event reports. We have the data. I think data is key to quickly get in contact with players. But I think if you're able to adapt right now, you'll really capitalize on everything with the recruitment and during this, unique time. So, but appreciate Ryan having me on, man. We go way back. He touched on it a little bit. I know there's guys on this call. I mean, we'll have 3 coaches coming to our event this weekend in Myrtle Beach. We dodged a big one. I know, Adam, you're dealing with it up there. I'm dealing with it in Myrtle Beach. It was a little scary last night, but we made it through. And but we love helping coaches, man. We've had probably over 40 coaches that have come in that, we understand it. We've lived it, man. I've been in those locker rooms, those living rooms when, you get the news that you're let go and it's not a good position to be in, but we've all been there. And we're here to help, those coaches. I know Ryan was in that position. We have several guys coming this weekend to help guys get back into it. And if we can ever help any guy in that way, man, just reach out to myself, Jeff, and we'll provide an opportunity to do that, to get to see some players, put you in positions to grow some relationships and hopefully get back into it. So, but appreciate you having me on, Ryan, and glad to answer any questions.
Thanks, Kevin. We'll go ahead and open things up for questions. Please, when you ask a question, please state your name and your school affiliation, please.
Hey, Price, I got a quick question, man. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
This is for Kevin at Big Shots. Hey, Kevin, my name's Safet Castrat. I'm a student manager at Rider University and an intern at Made Hoops. I've been seeing you guys have been running events how have those been so far? What's the feedback with the parents and the college coaches with the live stream? And and what's your overall feedback on it, especially during this pandemic?
Yeah, man. First of all, you guys do a great job up there. You know, I've known Chad a long time, and what you guys are doing with me, it's great. You know, it's a unique time. I mean, you know, I think we always say we play that game in our head 100 times before we take the floor and coach it, play it. And the same thing goes with running an event. You know, I think this pandemic's a unique time. You know, we really put together a good protocol that I thought touched on everything we needed to hit. You know, we're in South Carolina this weekend in Myrtle Beach. So basically how we operate, we require masks, fans, spectators, media, coaches, players, officials, whoever's in the building, you know, and then obviously the players not while they're participating, but we have, spray guns from Oxytime. That's a company out of South Carolina that's a sponsor. That we clean the gym, disinfect it after each game. We have the balls disinfected prior to each game. You know, with the seating, we space it out each court. We have the benches staggered. You know, so when we first held that event in Myrtle Beach in July, I think a lot of people came down, man, top teams like a Garner Road, a B-Mays, you know, a Team Marie, some of these top teams. And they were uncertain. And there was a lot of uncertainty going into, you know, a place like Myrtle Beach during that time. And so, you know, the facility was great. We clear the gym after each game. You know, that's something we do in Myrtle Beach. And I think teams and parents felt comfortable in that setting. You know, we had Mikey Williams come in and play a game, and that was a battle trying to fight off the crowd that Mikey brings to the game, you know. So, but I think if you do the right things, like, you know, as far as the seating, require masks and be strict with it. You know, we require waivers when they come in. We check everybody's temperature as soon as they come in the door, spectators and players, coaches. You know, the staff's checked every day, you know, with the you know, Corona tests and things like that. So we're doing things that are, you know, a necessity to host an event. I think if you do those things and be strict with it, then you could be okay.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Got any other questions? I know we got to have questions for we got four guys that can give us the pulse on a lot of things we're recruiting.
Hey, Price, I'm gonna go ahead, man.
Okay, appreciate it, Marlon.
Hey, Think Dog, I'm gonna throw this to you, man. Just talk a little bit about your journey, and I guess all of you guys can touch in on this, on your journey that led you to this business. You know, I think when all of you guys first started, it really wasn't a business. It was something that you did as a hobby, and eventually it turned into a business. Just talk about that journey and how hard. What were some of the issues you went through to get to this point now? If all of you guys could touch in on that.
I mean, I'll go first. Again, for me, it was just a blatant level of to me, I think personal disrespect, to be honest with you. Just seeing the lack of representation of minorities and people of color in the evaluation space. I think it's the uncomfortable conversation at this level, but it's something that sticks out to this day. When you look at all the publications that cover this lane for college coaches, for prep school coaches, whatever you want to name, there are no people of color on these staffs. And me personally, I find that, and even when I initially started, like, why is that? Like, somebody has to change it. And then not just somebody, why can't it be me? I felt I've been educated in the game of basketball by some great teachers in my background, in my upbringing, that I clearly understand what I'm looking at, and just having a honest, thought on what I see. I don't try to, use a lot of hyperbole on guys. I don't get too low. I don't get too high on prospects. I just report what I see. One of my niches for me personally, like I don't get into a running standing like ranking. That's just not my thing, because I rank what I see at an event, sure, but to have a running standing ranking, like to many people now, like a lot of kids are not playing, but like rankings are going up, down, left, right. Like how, if everyone is not playing? So I just want to bring a level of representation that I still fight to this day, until the end. So for me, this was my passion and wanting to do it. I mean, it definitely wasn't a hobby for me. It was something that I wanted to see a change in, and just I continue to do that.
I'll go. Yeah, mine was totally by accident. It was discovering something that I didn't know I loved at the time. And for me, and began with and continues to really be a main focal point in what I do, is that these kids are more than their jump shot, and they all have a story, and that story can affect a lot of things in their life. You know, Solomon's story was 2 tours of duty in Iraq and Afghanistan, growing up in Compton, you know, not being somebody that really was ever given a chance at much of anything, and kind of created a lot of things himself. And knowing that story and knowing him and how he would succeed or fail based on, you know, who he was, in addition to, you know, being able to play, and things like that. And so that's something that has really, that I gravitated to. You know, I love traveling. I love storytelling. I love hearing other people's stories. I love experiencing different cultures and getting uncomfortable in my space. Like I'm never happier than when I'm out in some far-flung place, like, you know, kind of looking around, wondering like what the hell's about to happen next. And like that's something that I gravitated to. And so I find that every day in this job now, where I get to talk to all these kids and I get to hear their stories. I get to you know, get to hear in their voice their successes, but then you also get to hear their failures. And, you know, how does that, how can you help? You know, like I'm just such a big proponent, and if you can help, do it. And so that's kind of just something that has stuck with me, and fortunately, you know, found a way to take something that I was just passionate about and turn it into something that is now a job for me. And,
Adam.
I think he still got his screen muted.
The screen is on.
you're muted, Adam.
Yeah, you're muted, Adam.
All right, sorry. Yeah, thank you. So Marlon's a good friend of mine. He's probably the only one I'd allow to call me Fink Dog in a public setting like this. But you know, I think you know, basketball, not just scouting and evaluating, but basketball as itself was kind of an accident for me. As I said, I was a manager at UConn, but I didn't actually begin that till like my junior year. I had, you know, I was a business major and had a series of internships in the healthcare industry, and just was, you know, and that was the industry my father worked in, and I kind of expected to follow in his footsteps. And then when I was a junior in college, he ended up taking an early retirement, and he was very successful, but just unhappy. And so that to me was really an eye-opening experience, where I said, you know what, I don't want to do that. Not only was he unhappy, he was unhealthy, and there was a correlation there, you know, between those two things. So that's me. I was a junior in college, and I said, you know what, I'll go along in that path, because, you know, I'm going to try and measure the success of what I do with just, you know, just kind of whether or not it makes me happy. And so, again, for me, I thought it was coaching. And truth be told, if I honestly, I think it could have been coaching if you know, I say that for maybe you guys, a lot of you guys will be able to, could be, versus the idea of, you know, kind of what it is on a day-to-day basis. I always thought there was a disconnect there. So I was really passionate about coaching, but evaluation part of it, I enjoy. And I just, the thing that I take pride in this part, because I think, like, you know, everybody's made really good points, and there's like good work to be done here, but I'm trying to be a little bit of a, like, to not you know, not sugarcoat anything, not hype anybody up, not try and perpetuate. There's so many narratives that people are trying to perpetuate for whatever their reasons are, and sometimes they're well-intentioned reasons. But I think that, you know, so just to answer, expected part of the journey with basketball in and of itself, and then when you get fired, that's a whole nother thing. And as it's come to this evaluation, to never compromise what you really think is the truth, you know, for the sake of somebody else's narrative. That's you know, that's what I try and pride myself on. So I hope that answered the question.
I'm gonna start calling you Think Dog now, Adam. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Marlon, you know, I think with, you know, how we got into it, you know, how I got into it. I played.
That's, you know, Marlon and I are gonna have to have a private conversation after this is over. Yeah.
No doubt. Yeah, but, you know, as a player, I wanted to, you know, obviously play as long as I could. Yeah, and that lasted about, you know, 4 years. I played at Longwood in Hawaii Pacific, and then after I got out of it, I was able to jump into this right away. And I always wanted to coach, man. It was in my blood to coach. But I realized I could help thousands of kids, not just, you know, the 15 in the locker room. And whether it was helping a player go D3, you know, I had a mom break down to me last weekend in Charleston about how I helped her son go D3. If there's guys going JUCO, or guys need to go, you know, to D1, or you're helping Aaron Naismith or Grayson Allen or Shane Larkin, or the guys that really kind of were looking and out there proving that they were that damn good, but weren't really being recognized. And so, you know, I think be about the right things. You know, I mean, I think that's important. You know, the game of basketball can take you so many different ways. You know, be about the right things, maintain relationships. You know, there's guys I talk to on a regular basis that I've known since we started. You know, I call them the original 19, and when I see them, I let them know, hey, man, I remember you in 06, or, you know, or if it was your first guy you recruited, or because the basketball world is so small, the relationships you have. You know, I see Darius Nichols on the call. I mean, I remember when Darius first started. You know, Darius going to be a longtime head coach, you know, and there's just, it's the relationships, do things the right way, maintain those relationships. And, you know, I think you can find your way, you know, Marlon, if you're trying to do whatever you're trying to do, whether it's, you know, recruiting or events. You know, I think you got to be out. You can't just hide behind a computer. I think people want to see you in the gym, get to know who the people are that are tweeting about, who's tweeting it out. You know, I think social media is great, but there's nothing like being there in person, you know, and represent who you are and making yourself known. So I think if you do those things, you can be successful, man.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you. Adam, sorry for that.
What's going on, sirs? John Mandeldove here. I had a question for all of you guys. In regards to recruitment and how you guys are evaluating some of these talented young men, what are the three things that you guys as scout analysts are looking at as far as projection is concerned? And what are some of the things that some of the college coaches are asking you with your evaluations of young men in the areas that you all are in?
For me personally, I mean, I go off production. Production always matters. We could sit here, we could say all the proper things. At the end of the day, for you guys at the college level, your jobs are based off wins and losses. You can graduate your whole team for 4 years, but if you're not winning no games, you're going to be fired. Ironically enough, if you win a bunch of games and nobody graduates, you'll probably get extension. So for me, production is number one. Number two, and this is size with your production, because you often get calls about a little guard that may be 5'7", they shoot up all the balls, and people think they can play at the highest level. But when you realize this 5'7" kid is playing against 1-2A competition in their area, in their state, like how they're getting it done doesn't always translate to certain levels of college. And sometimes breaking that reality down to some prospects and their families, of course, they don't want to hear it, but college coaches, at the end of the day, they're going to hold to that. They understand that. They want to know if something true to size, because they might hear about a kid, oh, it's a 6'11" kid, blah, 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 and then come to find out the kid is 6'8". That's a huge difference. 6'8" and 6'11" is a huge difference. And then I think my third thing is approach, demeanor, how someone approaches something from the layup line to the final whistle. To me, that matters in a prospect of, is this kid a high major kid? Is he always about his business? Does he have high major potential, but he's probably a mid-major player? Or he's talented, but it takes too much for him to get up. And at the end of the day, most coaches, especially at the highest levels, they're not trying to coach effort. That's one of the last things they're trying to do. You can be talented all day long, but they're not trying to coach your effort. So for me, those are some of the things that jump out when you say three things.
For me, you have to be dynamic. Coaches will call and they say, "Hey, Brandon, I need a shooter." All right, coach, here's the shooter. Yeah, but he's not. How athletic is he? Like, man, you didn't say anything about athleticism. You said you need a shooter. Everybody gets, they want this, that, whatever thing. But I can tell you, at the end of the day, if you're dynamic enough, you can figure it out. Being a dynamic player, whether that means that if you're a shooter, yeah, you don't need to be athletic, but maybe you need to defend your ass off, and you need to have good feet, and you need to be able to defend your position, and then we'll worry about the other stuff. So you got to have more than one thing. Though I will say, especially if we're talking about Division I level, and if you're going to be a Division I player, you better be able to do something really, really well, like really stands out better than everybody else that's on the floor. Everybody says, "Oh, I'm a Division I player. I average 20 points a game." I know kids that average 20 points a game at Division I JUCOs, like it's solid Division I JUCOs, not the highest levels of JUCO, but solid Division I JUCOs that are not necessarily really Division I players. There's not one thing that they do at a super high level, that really says that that's a Division I player. Character can win a lot of basketball games, and especially in late recruitment. When you're getting into May, June, July, like if I'm talking to you about a kid in July, that better be a damn good kid, because there's a lot of mistakes that are made in late summer, just basing everything off of who's the best available player. You can win a lot of games by maybe not taking the best available player, but you take a world-class kid, because at that point, the actual best available players that can really truly impact winning aren't there late in the summer. You're looking for somebody that maybe you can mold, that you can teach, that's going to rise above his abilities because he is such a good kid. They work so hard. They have the motor, they have all those sorts of things. Somewhere in there, I think there were three things. So.
I don't want to, Dov, I don't want to give you like a non-answer to those three things, but I don't necessarily go in with like a checklist that I'm trying to pinpoint. I think, and I know some people do that, and it's probably a good system, but what I'm trying to identify with that three theme concept, I'm trying to figure out like the DNA of who a player is as a prospect. That's what I'm trying to figure out. And then I'm trying to approach it, think of it as if I were still coaching, and say, okay, at what level would I want to coach this kid? At what level is this kid, is he somebody I want in my program? And so I think that comes down to, as I said, just giving initially it's about pinpointing the more you see him, you're trying to get deeper into the book and discover the nuance of his game. So I don't really have like a checklist of 3 things, but I think just from a process standpoint, initially you're trying to identify like the DNA of a player. You're asking yourself, okay, at what level would this be somebody that I'd want to really, take a chance on? And then from there, you're just trying to, as I said, you're trying to, I believe in projecting them out. And I think that's, I don't mean to totally, I don't mean to disagree with what Dain said, but I think just to give it another perspective, I think that right now, as I said, who they are right now is like a singular data point. And, if we're talking about a 4-year college player, who they're going to be along the line of that period, I think you got to try and figure out what way they're projecting. Is it a linear line? Is it a flat line? What's the rate of, and there's a lot of different things that go into that. So I just don't know that it can be distilled down to 3 variables that are constant no matter the player. But that's hopefully a glimpse at my overall process.
Yeah, John, I think things you quickly look at, I guess production, like Dain had mentioned, I think you got to produce. But I also think you look at a length sells, athleticism, and then skill set. I think you got to have some type of skill set that projects you to a certain level. Like Angelo Breezy, I think he found a great fit in Villanova. I think he fits that level at that style of play, that program. Dontrez Styles, he fits to shut down defender at North Carolina. I think you figure out what player best fits maybe certain programs at certain levels, and where he can be most successful. And I talk about this all the time when, Tim Jankovic, Jank, myself, and my dad would sit there and we'd say, who'd you pick your 5? Who you want? And you pick the guys you'd want on your team. Who would you want to have on your team? Who would you not want to play against? Because those are usually guys you'd like to have. And it's simple as that. If a guy can play, you'd rather have him be on your team than play against him. I think Terquavian Smith, that's another guy that I think found a perfect fit in Kevin Keats at NC State. Just that, mentality come at you. And so I think that's big. I also think, depending on the age, foot size is big. I think hand size is big. I think there's a player, Jay Gortman, that's hot in South Carolina right now that I think's a pro. And he hadn't even had a Division I offer. Now South Carolina offered, I think he's high level. But, he had huge hands at a young age, man. And the ball came off different. And you can kind of just tell with intangible skill set, work ethic. I think the hardest thing right now, Jonathan, is evaluating the it factor, like who has that in them, because you can't evaluate that in a live stream. It's hard that's the hardest part right now, I think, is figuring out who has that extra dimensional, heart, work ethic, and stuff you can't just see on film. So, but all those things go into, predicting what level a player can play at the end of the day.
I have a question. Sean Tucker, Chesapeake College, women basketball. Kevin, this question could be directed towards you. As a guy with some grassroots background, one of the things that when you're running a tournament, we kind of look for was it facilities good? Was there competition there? And was it ran well? So do you feel like now you gotta, is grassroots and AAU becoming oversaturated? I know, how do you look at it from a quality over quantity, standpoint? There are more teams, there are more people, but sometimes the level of play is just like, sometimes you ask yourself, why are these 2 teams even playing? So can you talk to it from that perspective? Like, is the game AAU being oversaturated? Is it a good thing to get more teams and less quality? Or is it, should we get back to, you touched on it when you went around, you went to DC, you met a couple of guys. Because when I started out, there was only a few elite team, AAU programs that were really good. And then it started changing. Can you talk to it from that perspective?
Yeah, man. I think the, in 06, there was no shoe company teams. I think that's changed it a lot. over the course of time. I mean, when we used to have our events in Phoenix, I remember when Keith Stevens didn't have even a shoe deal. Ty White didn't even have a shoe deal. And the game's changed, for the betterment, I think, of the elite guys. That really helps elite guys. I think it helps even some guys that are sleepers make their name in that regard. But quality's key in anything you do, whether it's events, running a program. I think if you can help a player get a D3 scholarship, a D2, get on, at a D2 level, it's worth it. It's worth it, man. And I think it's about, I did our scheduling today for a 100-team event, and I think scheduling is important too. You got to make sure, like, Dwayne West and Garner Road does not want to play against a team that they're going to beat by 60. Put them up against somebody that is a good eval, because these coaches that are tuning in, they want to evaluate the same level of talent. They don't want to see somebody lose by 60. And that's why I hate pool play, because unless you're in an elite pool, you're beating somebody. Usually if you're the top team, you're winning by, 20, 30, unless it's a super pool. And I think it gets the level of talent quicker. And it's a much better evaluation and, by seeing equal level of talent. But if you're able to help any player get a scholarship, man, it's worth it. And I always feel that way.
Thanks.
I've got a question for you guys. This is Martin Bahar out at San Diego. Do you guys think there's more D1 players than there are D1 scholarships? I always feel like there's a percentage of D1 guys where there's really good D2 and D3 players who could play D1. There's just not enough opportunities. I don't know what you guys think. I've always felt that, but I would love your guys' perspective, because, you as a coach, you miss on a couple guys and they may go lower, they may go non-D1, and you still think they're good. So just any perspective from you guys have on that would be appreciated.
I'll go. I don't know if it's necessarily that there are more D1 players than there are scholarships. I think there are a lot of guys that get D1 scholarships that aren't D1 players. And so you end up with this space where there's just not enough room, but it's not necessarily because there was, 1,000 scholarships available and there were 1,200 D1 players. It's just that 1,000 might have been filled by 300 D2 players. And that's not a knock on D2 or anything. It's just, the way that the numbers work out. And unfortunately, we find so late now, it's crazy right now. We're in the middle of a freaking pandemic, and we got kids that are saying, hey, I'm holding out. And it's August, what is it, 4th today? And they're saying, well, no, I'm a D1 player. And I say, look, dude, where's the scholarship? And I'm not even telling you you're not a D1 player. I would, I'm always more than happy to tell a kid if I don't think that they're being realistic with where they fit into the world. But even if they're a D1 player, I mean, they're hanging out right now because some other guy went ahead and pulled the trigger and didn't sit around and wait and count offers and all that kind of stuff. And so I think realistically that truly there are probably fewer true D1 level players than there are scholarships, but then it just kind of gets filled in on the back.
If I could add to that, because Marty, I use that exact same line, and I'll keep this really brief, but I actually use it specifically for the Division II level. I think there are more Division II players, like, for those kids and those families who are trying to be guided through that process, because they say, I'm a scholarship player. And what I always tell families is you are what you are what the market tells you are. And if you don't, it's supply and demand at its most basic level. And if you don't have those opportunities, you may be a Division II caliber player, but if you don't have those Division II offers, you've got to be ready to make the best decision you can, given the options that you have in front of you. And specifically, I think the level where the supply really exceeds the demand, in my experience, is at the Division II level.
Yeah, Martin, first of all, I'd love to be out with you in San Diego right now. I know that, man. And, I think it's all about the right fit. I think everybody obviously would probably want to go D1 when they first start the recruiting process. But, you only can take so many guys. There's only so many scholars that, you know, you guys can give out, you know. So I think it's about the fit, you know. I mean, I think there's guys that are probably D2 level talent guys, but are going to be all conference, maybe all American caliber guys at the D3 level. You know, so I stress fit. I think that's the most important thing. I mean, the portal right now made my head spin. I know everybody's going to it. It's become something that's so vital in recruiting. It's almost like, you know, if you're not I'm telling 21s now that, like, hey, if you have opportunity, you like your fit, take it, because that portal has become something that everybody's going to, and they're not going to the unsigned senior once we get to that springtime. It's just not happening. They're going straight to the portal. So, you know, I think, and that's really changed recruiting is the transfer portal. So if they can jump on that early and find the right fit, whether it's D1, D2, look, there's a lot of D2 programs. I know D1s do not want to play. They don't want to play Northwest, Missouri. They want to play against, you know, Florida Southern or Nova Southeastern or West Liberty. I mean, there's damn good D2 programs out there. You know, Point Loma, UC San Diego. I mean, those guys are getting it done. And I think that if those players can go to the right fit, that's the most important thing. So, you know, I stress fit.
I have a question on evaluations. Oh, my bad.
Somebody asking a question?
Yeah, Aaron Proy from DeMatha Catholic. I just have a question for you know, anyone that wants it. When you look back at the guys that you missed an evaluation on, like, you know, maybe he's in the NBA now and you didn't think he was going to make it, what is often the traits that you missed that maybe informed your rankings or your decisions later?
You know, I can tell you the one that stands out to me the most. I'll jump on that quick. You know, I remember when Jeremy Lamb came through when he had like 33 at Peach Jam, and he was on that Georgia Stars team that, you know, had Marcus Thornton and some guys like that. I thought he was a player that came out of nowhere. You know, his dad played for actually my dad at VCU, so I knew his mindset, his mental toughness was there. But, you know, Jeremy Lamb's one that obviously went to UConn, did his thing there, won a national title. He's going to be a 10-year vet in the league. So I thought Jeremy was a high minus. You know, obviously he became a high-level guy and made a quick jump to the league. So that's one that I would say that, you know, quickly rose up the ranks and made a name for himself.
I'll take the other side with the, you know, when you miss on a guy, but it goes the other way. And I think a lot of times it has come down to like really fully appreciating where they're at mentally, not necessarily even toughness, but like with their habits and their ability to adapt and buy into different situations. You know, most of the time the kids that end up not making it here and there are, you know, you hear, you know, they had the talent, but they're off, you know, their brain's over here. And that's probably the hardest part, I think, for us to really, really evaluate is the true inside of what's going on in that kid's head. And you do the best you can and you have the conversations and you know, you try and piece it all together. But, you know, not everybody has that mental makeup to be the level of player that maybe their body is capable of being.
You know, what I would say is I think when you're projecting guys out to the next level, whether it's college or NBA, you're forecasting a futures market, and that in and of itself is a very inexact science. So you're gonna miss. I mean, everybody misses. There's literally the key is to miss less than other people do, and I think the other key is that when you do miss, to have you know, to miss based on criteria that usually works out, if that makes sense. So I'm going to give you an example because I know, you know, I saw John's on the call. Kellen Grady, who played at Northfield Mount Hermon, I missed on. He's better than I thought he would be. He was better right away at Davidson. He was tremendous right away at Davidson. Now, my reason for not being as high on him out of high school, I still think that my reasoning was sound. He was a year older for his grade. He was frequently hurt. So I didn't, I questioned his toughness. He was more like reputation than it was production until the very end of his high school career. So those three things. Now, so if another player comes around now and I can still cite those three things, I'm still probably going to feel, skeptical about that player. Now, Kellen Grady, he proved me wrong. Despite all those three things, he proved me wrong. So I think that sometimes, lots of times there are lessons to be learned. But I think the other reality is when you're projecting a futures market, you're going to get some wrong. You're going to get a lot wrong. But it's just about coming up with philosophies and kind of guidelines that help you be right more consistently than the rest of the market.
As for me and my missus, I try to keep it to a minimal. In my case, I don't project forward because for a college coach, he needs whatever fixing, whether it's rebounding, defending, or point guard. They need that either immediately or within some time. But I'm just letting them know what they do at this level, because even when a lot of the guys ascend to a high level, they do revert back to people at that college level, at the high school level of who they, like the origin of who they are. So, and some of the guys, when I look around, like I try to learn from maybe some of the examples that people may have missed on, and like a kid that was in my area and I dealt with him and dealt with the complaints. And when Trae Young was coming up and why so many people were down on him and he could do this and he couldn't do that. And Trayvon Duval was the best thing. But if you looked at his ability, and if you look at even some of the film of him back then, he was pretty much doing a lot of the same things. Now, did anyone see him doing what he did at Oklahoma? No one saw that. But he had the opportunity to go and do that. So when it's talking about missing on someone, it's like I try to keep it as I'm not going too far in what they're going to be other than what they do. That's why I'm big on production. Like, what are they doing now? Because that's what's going to help them.
Got you.
I've got a question for you guys. Anybody can take this, but when you think about the first two or three guys that pop into your head as, man, these guys are elite recruiters at our level. Is there one quality that those guys all possess? Is it, they all have a dynamic personality, or they follow up on everything? Like, what is it that stands out to you guys that makes the first two or three assistant coaches or head coaches really just jump off the page? I'm asking as a young assistant coach trying to be great at this.
To me, they know basketball, because I think all the bells, whistles up, when you strip all of that down, that they can go into any gym and it could be skins on skins. They don't have a sheet. They don't have a jersey number. They can pick up who can and cannot play. And they've ascended in the industry for that very same reason, that if they were at a lower level to the mid-level to the highest level and, head coach eventually, I think a lot of the guys, they have that ability. Like they know basketball. And I think sometimes in this business, in this industry, people are involved and, like, to be honest, they don't know basketball. And, to each his own, and it comes out eventually. But the really good ones, like, they know basketball.
We were talking earlier about relationships. Everybody kind of mentioned how important relationships are. I think Ross Hodge is one of the best recruiters I've ever seen, and I've known Ross a long time. And he has this innate ability to recognize what he wants. It doesn't matter if people say, well, that's too high for where you're at or whatever. And he goes in there and he builds this unbelievable relationship with these guys, pulling players in when he was at Colorado State, like J.J. Avila and Stanton Kidd. And, now that they've got Javion Hamlet down at North Texas, and, Ream was fantastic in that recruitment and stuff. But, like, Ross just has this way of, in a very short period of time, building a relationship with the kid and getting them to come, because that kid now, like, it wants to buy into that program wherever it is that Ross is at. like that kid is all about buying into that program now.
The thing that I would add to what those guys said is I think the guys who have the best information are the best recruiters. You have to know the game. You have to have relationships. But the amount of coaches I see who waste time because they're going after somebody who they legitimately have no chance of getting because they don't understand what the recruitment's going to boil down to at the end of it, because they're talking to the wrong person, because they don't understand who the players are behind the scenes. The best recruiters don't get fooled by that stuff. So I think that having in addition to knowing the recruiters who have the best information are ultimately the ones who are the best at their job.
You know, Chris, obviously I think you guys are as good as anybody out there at recruiting. You know, I see Dre on the call, you know, Tom, you know, obviously Wes is ranked number 1 under 40 for a reason. You know, and I know Isaiah Miller, who's SoCon Player of the Year. Isaiah Miller had no scholarships when he was playing in our events, and you guys were on him. All right, and he's SoCon Player of the Year, and he's going to play in the NBA. I mean, he's that talented. He has that type of heart, and we saw that. So I think it's trust in your eye. I mean, I know who follows. You know, I'll see one program offer a player, and literally like within 30 minutes that next program's offering that kid. I mean, I think for several different reasons, but there's certain programs that I think do an outstanding job recruiting, and they trust their eye. They have the information. They do their homework. They know basketball, like Dain was saying, and you know, I think those programs are the programs that are winning. And you can easily track who gets it done on the recruiting trail, I think, you know, by, you know, wins and losses. So, you know, I think you guys are doing an outstanding job at UNCG.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate that.
Hey, I got one. Sorry for the UNCG back-to-back hits. I know with everything going on now, you guys are super important to our classes and stuff. And Kevin, you said it earlier. You knew the kid from Kinston a good fit for Carolina because everybody knows Carolina rosters. They know they have a point guard that pushes it. They have a wing that defends. They have a scorer on the other wing. And they got 2 bigs. How much do you guys study teams that's not in the top 20 and teams that's at the mid-major level? So when you call guys on, say, hey, I got a player that can play in your league, how much do you guys actually watch of other leagues, not Power 5 schools and things of that nature? And all you guys can answer that if you want.
Well, for me, I try to see all the schools that I have. I try to see them play. I watch a lot of games, whether in person or I go to games. I try to watch them play at least 3 times a year. I try to get a feeling of that coaching staff style and what they need. You know, what Tony Bennett need is different from Jim Boeheim, is different from Kellen Sampson, is different from just any other coach you can think of. So knowing your personnel, knowing who you're dealing with, and in my case, because of my service, I'm like you colleges are my you know, you're my client, so I have to address you guys. So I do need to know how my schools play and what they're looking for and what they're lacking. Now, granted, I'm not in the recruit meeting where, you know what, they may be switching something and going another direction unless they bring me into that. So again, I'll know if somebody's missing ball handling, if they're missing a rim protector, and then a rim protector, again, at Syracuse may not be the rim protector at Houston. They just have different styles of recruiting. So for me, I definitely watch, you know, I definitely try to watch them at the same time. If I got 2 clients playing one another, that's a great time to watch them and go to that game because I killed 2 birds with 1 stone. So that's how I try to knock it out.
You know, what I would say to that is I think that it becomes part of the communication process between the client and the scouting service. So when, you know, if you were to call me and say, hey, you know, we're looking for this position, my follow-up question would be, well, tell me what you're looking for in particular, and trying to get down to the specifics of it as quickly as I could. That becomes easier the longer you work with a certain staff. I know, like today I got a text from a head coach, and bless you. Today I got a head coach text from a head coach, and he said, hey, what about this kid? And the kid was probably good enough to play in his conference, but I was like, hey, he could probably play in your conference, but he can't play for you because he's just not tough enough. And this coach has very little tolerance for guys who aren't tough. So I think that the longer you work with certain schools and certain staffs, the more, continuity you get with what they're really looking for. But I also think that if you do take a service, or whichever services you do take, the more information and dialogue you can give them is going to be really helpful. The coaches that I have the hardest time helping are the ones that call me and say, I need a long, athletic, skilled guy. And I just, like, Scottie Pippen isn't available all the time. Sometimes you just can't, so I think that emphasis on fit and the specifics of the fit for certain programs is important in both ends. The coaches have to know what they need, what they're willing to compromise on. And then ideally the kids will be able to find a spot where what they do well is really highlighted.
Yeah, I think that's just an incredibly important part of how you spend your day in this is, I take all these notes, right, when I'm talking to coaches and getting to know head coaches and what do they want? Because, the assistants a lot of times are going to just want what the head coach says they want, right? So you're trying to go through and sift through all these things, figuring out what does coach want. So I need that information. And then it's usually 5-6 hours a day of synergy and live games. And I think it's important. It's a really, really tough job watching a lot of basketball, right? Like I spent 15 years in the corporate world. Like every time I turn on a game, I'm like, oh, thank God this is what I do now instead of what I was doing before. But it's a huge amount of film for multiple reasons. One, like I want to know, how does UNCG play? That you're asking me for a 4-man. Well, I need to know what your 4-man does now and how does it operate in your system and all that sort of thing. But I think it also is just always a constant learning game too for context. Like it's always good to really refresh your mind when you're saying, okay, UNCG and the level of competition and what fits and what works and what doesn't and what you have to be able to do in that league, because leagues are so different, right? Like the Southland is drastically different than the WAC. And, how do all those pieces fit together? So, for me, like film is huge. And then obviously those conversations where it's, you can tell me you want a 6'9" athletic skill guy that can shoot it. And then we really kind of break down like, okay, well, what do you really need? And, what can really fit and what can you live without? And, all those other things.
Dre, I think knowing your personnel is big. I know the guys you offer, every guy you've offered fits what you guys do, and I think knowing your personnel, I also think knowing roster management. Roster management now is what it's about. If you already got a guy, you got the Langley twins, you're going to have them for the next 3 years. What is it like as far as what you may need at the guard spot? Do you need a big, this guy graduates next year. You need somebody to come in and take Isaiah's spot. So there's knowing the personnel, knowing what's worked in the past with that staff, and then figuring out, the needs are. I think to tell you guys to go recruit, a big, if you already got a freshman all-conference big, I think that doesn't make as much sense, So roster management, something big. We watch a ton of games. That's the great thing about college basketball, man, is there's games on all the time, different stations, and it's constantly on in the office just watching games. So on repeat or whatever, but knowing the personnel and roster management is key, and keeping up with all programs.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, I've got a question. This is James Williams from Atlanta, Georgia, Between the Lines Sports. I'm fairly new to the scouting service business. Kevin, I know you. Dain, I know you guys. Just quick question. You guys are like giants in the space, right? Do you guys ever struggle with the amount of clients and customers that you guys have in answering phone calls and trying to make sure you're putting the right players with the right teams? How do you guys navigate, in theory, being so big, so to speak?
As far as, teams go, James, communicating with the college coaches, I think guys, I try and get everybody by text quickly. I'm up late at night, up early, so, by email, by DM, it doesn't matter how you hit me. I'll hit you right back on it. I think the communication's got to be, quickly done. As we've grown with our industry as far as tournaments go, maintaining those relationships key. I know I've seen you at our events and you're doing an outstanding job getting it going, man. So, I think the main thing is just communicating promptly with people and treat everybody like they're your own client. I think that's the most important thing. I tell that to my housing people. My official guy just text right now. Treat me like I'm your only client. And I think if you have that mentality, you'll continue to be successful as you grow.
I think one of the huge benefits of doing this job full time now is that I have the freedom. I'm not going into the office, right? I've got my home office, and I get all these added benefits of doing this. But at the same token, it's hard to turn it off. I probably don't do a very good job, and it's something that I have to continue to work on as far as like making time. I've got kids, I've got a wife, I've got a life that I need to make better time for. But it's one of those things where if you are going to have all those benefits of flexibility and working from home and everything, you also do have that added level of responsibility where, there are times when I get a phone call at 10 o'clock at night and it's like, all right, unless there's just something drastic going on that I just can't take it. Like it's a call that I got to take. And you end up kind of finding your comfort zone, and your clients end up, as long as you do right by them and stuff, they kind of find a comfort zone where it's, it's easy to kind of get that communication in a reasonable time. But there's going to be stuff that's just, sometimes I feel like I'm juggling, 42 balls in the air, and they're all going to come crashing down on my head. So.
Well, definitely, James. To answer that too, it's funny because I think all the guys on can agree. Like it comes in ebbs and flows throughout the course of the year. Us being in the summer, it's kind of invoice time. So believe it or not, your phone may not ring a lot because they know they probably owe you an invoice and don't want to hear from you. When the season comes, who's having success, those guys kind of they stay. They want to stay in the foxhole because they're rolling. A team that's struggling, they may not quite. So it actually, with you growing in the business, and I definitely believe you'll be great at doing this. When you do get it rolling for yourself, it's not, I don't think it's ever going to become overwhelming that your phone, and people get it. Y'all call you right back. I have one of almost like a a good friend of mine hates that I hit him with it, but I have like a already organized message that I'm on the other line. I'll call you right back. And as long as you just get back to everybody, whether it's Power 5, low, high major to low major, Division 2, Division 3, just call everybody back. Because you're only one person, especially if you're doing it like myself. I'm by myself. If you're only one person, they get that. They understand that. You probably do prioritize some people because you're going to have a love and respect for those that were there for you when you were starting now. And then when you become, the big dog on the block, they're still there with you. With that being said, certain people are going to have preference over other people. It is what it is. But it doesn't get, too crazy with the contact and things like that.
What I would say, James, is I can really kind of relate to what Brandon was talking about, because I as I mentioned, I have a wife and 2 kids at home, and sometimes when the phone tends to beep more between 9 and 11 than it does p.m. than it does a.m., and that's not necessarily great for your home life. So I think when you're starting, when you're just getting a foot in the door, this is a business, whether you're coaching or scouting or whatever, but the basketball business is something that everybody wants to be in. And so you've got to be willing to go the extra mile to get in. Now, once you get to, I think, and you don't ever want to lose sight of that mindset. My rule is if I hear from somebody, I get back to everybody the day of. If I miss them, I get back to them the day of. But if somebody texts me at 10:30 at night, I'm not going to be, I might just text them back and say, hey, is it urgent or can I call you in the morning? Because at some point, like, you have to have some balance with that family life too. And I think that coaches understand that because coaches are fighting that same balance too. You know, they've got a boss who's probably working them, well, undoubtedly working them a lot more than 40 hours a week, and they're trying to figure out how to make time for their family too. So I think when you do get into those situations where, you know, where it is family time, or you know, you can't answer the phone, I think sometimes if you just be really transparent that, you know, the guys in this business, everybody's fighting similar battles with their time. So they get it and they understand, they respect that, as long as they know that you're a worker and that, you know, you're gonna get back to them as soon as you're able to.
Thank you. I appreciate it, guys.
We have any more questions?
Yeah, I got a question. My name's Jonathan Finkel. So I know some of you guys do have hire people to work to write for you. What's kind of like the determining factors of if this guy's got good eyes or good feel for evaluating talent? Because your word is your brand, so you want to put out a good product. So what's kind of the determining factors as to sifting through all the guys that like are really good at evaluating scouting and which guys don't really have the best eyes?
You saying other guys in the industry?
No, I mean like people you hire to work for you. Like if you hire interns or writers. Like
in my case, I and again, it was the niche that I established for myself. I don't hire anyone. I report on what I see. I have a pretty flexible schedule, so I try to see as much as possible. Anyone who's ever come at me, believe it or not, I just walk them through the process of starting their own service. I don't believe, I mean, in knowing this industry with the amount of money that is out there with these universities and at the amount that a lot of them like put out every year, I would almost love to try to get a running total of the reported amount of money that these schools spend in scouting service budgets to explain to people that, I mean, there's a lane for everyone. If, you know, when I initially started, I mean, I was at $199. So it's affordable. And if you starting at an affordable rate for a lot of schools and you have the information and the intel that they want, and it's coming at a rapid enough pace that you're always in their inbox every, you know, 10 to 12 days, if possible. And it's information that they're using, you're going to see your phone pick up a little more. They're going to talk to their friends about you. So with that being said, it's just one of those situations that you can do it yourself. So the way that you do it, the way that I do it, the way that Adam does it, the way that Brandon does it, the way that Kevin does it, as many as we have the same schools, and we probably all have a lot of the same amount of schools, we all got different schools. We got schools that each other, you know, that some of us don't have. So trust and believe there's a niche, and I'm just speaking for those because I'm all about empowering young people that want to do it, to get out there and, you know, you might fall and hit your head and you're going to sleep on some floors and you're going to catch some rides, and because we've all done it. I've done it. It doesn't start off great all the time, but yeah, I say that to what you're asking.
I mean, we technically hire people. We do tend to work with guys that are trying to get into coaching. Either they already were and are making a transition of some kind. You know, Travis Garrett is starting to do some stuff with us now. He was the head coach at South Georgia Tech. And so we have this platform, we have this presence with especially with like the verbal commit side of things, where there's not a lot of guys that we don't know in some fashion or are able to connect with and things. So we want to offer that to guys like him, or Kyle Drennan, who's now at UIC. He was a D2 JUCO assistant, and he said, "Hey, I'm not going to get to where I want to get to unless I, you know, develop a stronger network." So he left that and came and worked for us for a year, and drove Uber at the same time, and did what he needed to do to take care of his stuff. And you know, so what he and I really focused on was, you know, he would watch players, he would go find guys and stuff, and then I would do an evaluation as well. And sometimes we were on the same page and sometimes we were on a different page with it, and, you know, found some common ground and things like that. But, you know, I'm out there, you know, bringing in guys that I know do a good job of evaluation and are looking for something though in regards to, you know, how can I help them? You know, I can pay them and we pay them, but I also want to help them get whatever it is that they want to get. And typically that's on the coaching side. And so we're able to help those guys network and then help them get jobs.
You know, Brandon, I'm the same, you know, way, and same with you, Dain. I mean, I think, you know, Jonathan, we have the ability, obviously, to be in the gym and seeing a lot of guys. We want to put people in position to scout, to advance in their career, whether it's coaching or even starting their own service. You know, I think I've had some guys that are better evaluators than others because I'll have to go in and correct some of the stuff they evaluate, or they put stuff in there. They're pretty critical, you know, on some guys when it's going out to the public. But, you know, I think the opportunity we have for guys to come in and scout and grow, whether it's having their own service or getting into coaching, we have that ability. And we try and help guys of all levels. Obviously, we have some better scouts than others. Paul Biancardi scouts a ton of our events. You know, we have a lot of former coaches that'll be here in Myrtle Beach that are trying to get back into it, that have coached at a high level. But there's also some guys that are just getting into it, that are managers, or it's their first time out on the road, and they got to start somewhere, you know? So I try and help those guys throughout the process and how to, you know, quickly evaluate maybe the right level, because some guys don't even know how to evaluate the right level. You know, they're putting a high major guy when he's probably a D2 guy, you know? So I don't let guys jump right in and start evaluating and mess up the rankings, because it's more work on me to go fix, you know. But I don't mind them putting in like a write-up on he had this many points and basic stuff first until they get comfortable with making the right evaluation. But that can come quickly if you watch a lot of ball and have a good feel for it.
You know, I think everybody's made all the key points here. So I don't have a ton to add. The one thing I would say is that you don't undervalue the importance of being competent in multiple fields. So like, I've never hired anybody to help me with my scouting service, but I think one of the things that's helped me at ESPN is versatility. So like, you know, Paul, you know, you just mentioned Paul Biancardi. So Paul's the head of our group, you know, and he's the one on TV. But if you know, but they can throw me on TV, and although I've got a face for radio, I won't really screw it up. You know, I can write well enough so that the editors on the site don't have to rewrite it. So I think that, you know, if you kind of think of it as like a Venn diagram of, and not to get overly academic here, but if the more things the more areas that you can touch, the better thing you're going to do. The more versatile you're going to be, the more opportunities you're going to have. So that's what's been really important to me. And if I was in a position to hire, I would probably look for something like that. So it's like, okay, you could throw him on TV. Okay, he could write an article for the site. Okay, he knows the game. He loves being in the gym. He can help you with the evaluations. You don't necessarily have to be the very best at any one of those things. If you are, terrific. But if you're not, then being competent in as many things as possible, I think can really make you, that in and of itself can end up being unique.
Steph, you got something?
Yeah, I guess this question is for everybody except Dain. He touched on it. You know, one of his reasons for getting into scouting was, you know, obviously it wasn't a lot of minorities, you know, in this lane. And, you know, my question is, with the racial things being at an all-time high, you know, with the NBA doing the whole Black Lives Matter movement and everybody, you know, kneeling and stuff like that. What are some of the things, or if anything, that any of the other guys that's in those, you know, those big seats doing that they kind of, you know, try to change that?
Well, you know, am I muted? Let me jump, because I'm, you know, being at ESPN, obviously I'm not in charge of hiring, but one of the things again is for the most part, we have had a diverse group. And I totally agree with Dain is that's not representative of the industry. But I have not only worked with, but learned a lot from guys like John Stovall and Reggie Rankin. So, when for the majority of the years I was there, that was the core four group. It was Paul and I, Reggie and John, and that was the four group. And I think that's but Dain is right. I mean, the industry is lacking diversity, and I think I think one of the things that's really interesting is that, you've seen college coaches doing this, and I don't know the exact name, so I'm going to get it wrong, but the McClendon family, like the scholarship program to help increase the amount of minorities in athletic administration. And when I first saw that, I thought to myself, that would be a great thing to extend to the world of scouting too, because as I just mentioned, there's a lot of different areas that go into scouting these days. It's not just being able to evaluate players. You got to be able to write. You've got to be able to communicate sometimes on air, sometimes in, Zoom, things like this. Now video work is becoming increasingly prevalent. So there's a lot of skill sets that can help you further yourself in that area. So all I can say is that I've been appreciative and have personally benefited from the group of guys that I've worked with at ESPN. But Dain's larger point is 100% accurate. And I think that's, about the industry as a whole. And I think that's something that I think my first impression was, I said that training program that you saw, like, Cal and Hugs and Tommy Amaker and Konzo Martin and some of those guys spearhead for coaches, I think could also be applicable to the scouting business as well.
Yeah, one of the main things that we're working on right now is, we have this ability to communicate with so many coaches, and we get a lot of phone calls for, hey, I've got an open spot, give me some names, whatever. And so we're putting a ton of emphasis on, increasing the number of minority coaches that are being hired. So we're doing that through our Project Rise initiative, that there'll be a bunch of stuff coming out on that lately. But we also I personally do graphic design, and then do a lot of video stuff as well, skills that, especially for entry-level guys that are getting into, whether it being a GA or an op spot, things like that, like graphic design, for example. Like, how do you learn graphic design? Like, if you didn't go to school for graphic design, like you're pulling up YouTube, things like that. Like, I want to be a resource for guys for things like that. So helping, lots of coaches just doing like a lot of private conversations and video calls and things like that, teaching them things, giving them skill sets that they can use for getting into those different coaching positions that they want. And then really building relationships with those guys so that, when it comes time for job time, we can make those phone calls, and then opening up our network to those guys more importantly than anything, really, because it's all about relationships. Head coaches hate hiring guys they don't know. So we kind of stick our foot in the door and say, hey, let me help you know some more people.
Steph, what's up, man? Hey, first off, you're doing a heck of a job with what you're doing. I don't know if you guys are all tuned into what Steph's doing with ICU, but he's crushing it in VA, has an outstanding feel for the talent throughout the state. So keep doing what you're doing, man. I'm keeping up with it. I think the diversity of what we do with Big Shots is maybe what I take pride in the most, from our staff to the relationships we have with our own teams that we have, and we have females involved. We have, all different types of, race involved with our company. And I take tremendous pride in that. And I think the opportunities we provide to people, no matter what they're trying to do, we're going to give them every opportunity to achieve that. And so, obviously we'd love to have you come to our events, and some of the guys that we've had in those positions have moved on to get college jobs, start their own recruiting services, and make a living out of scouting or coaching. So that's something we take tremendous pride in, and we always are trying to grow and help all, the diversity stuff going on. We're trying to help in any way we can. So appreciate you bringing that up, and I'll help you any way I can with growing what you're doing.
I actually want to add something right quick to what Steph just mentioned, and it's just something on my end, as far as what I'm doing, not just, again, complaining about something, but it's just really trying to put a lot of younger guys that I know in this space. It's a gentleman, Kevin Daniels, in the Northeast area, Adam Ayalu, in the DC area. James Williams is down in Atlanta. That coaches, and this is probably directed to a lot of the coaches on here, the D1 guys, or guys on their way up. Because trust and believe, guys that are grinding at the Division II, Division III JUCO levels, like this is the future. These younger guys are the future, and just being men of your word. I've had a reputation that I may take it personal or feel away when someone doesn't get my service. No, I take it personal when a coach says they're not going to do something and they don't do it. And I think for those lot of those younger guys coming up in this space, just like we were all young at one time, Adam, Kevin, and Brandon, just keep your word with a lot of those younger guys. Because as Kevin kind of mentioned, when some of you guys get fired, believe it or not, it's those type of guys that they have the line. They have a line with a particular coach because some people see the purity in what they're doing and knowing that they're coming from an honest space. So you never want to burn a bridge. Like often some coaches, as they know, a scouting service sometimes can hurt you more than it can help you. So why would you, have someone as an adversary when they truthfully can really, really help you instead of hurting you? So that's just my only pledge to a lot of the younger guys in the industry. If anyone has any questions of some of the guys who they have affordable services and they really do a really, really good job, just hit me out. Like I said, I put my number, my information in the bio. But yeah, just support, the future generation. I think some of us, myself, Adam's the big dog at ESPN and Kevin and those guys doing amazing things with Big Shot. They can ride off in the sunset. But some of these younger guys are trying to get to that space too where they want to ride off. So it's just really promoting the youth and promoting some of the younger guys to, eventually take it to another level.
Do we have any more questions? There's no more questions. I'll go ahead and starting with you, Dain, we'll get closing remarks from all four speakers.
Well, I just appreciate you guys taking the time, listen out. We've kept a strong group in here the entire time. My life is an open book. If anybody has any questions, by all means, like I said, you can contact me, you can text me, email me. I'm up, as Adam mentioned too. I'm a married man, 2 young kids as well, and I'm appreciative to God that my wife understands the life that I live, from late night talking to people on the West Coast to early in the morning people on the East Coast to Central Time talking to people all day. Basketball is pretty much my life, and it's what I've dedicated my life to. So don't hesitate to reach out. Again, you could just call me sometime to pick my brain and conversate about anything. But please believe I've been around a little while. I'm not gonna let you try to misuse me or anything like that. So I have a service. So if that's what we want to talk about, you want me to help you in that space, then we can go there. But any other thing as far as, like you said, navigating in this space, please just give me a call.
Yeah, I'll jump in. First off, Rod, thanks for having me on, man. You got a talented group of people in this room right now. I know Ryan Silver's been chilling on that couch. I don't know what he's been eating, but Ryan, you're doing a great job out west, and all the coaches that have tuned in, appreciate you jumping on. We do a lot of different things. Obviously, we have 2 recruiting services. We have one for Division I, one for non-Division I. We try and cater to all levels with it. Trying to find the best fits for you, whatever your needs may be. Be sure to tune into our live streams, hit me on DM or text me anytime. I'm here to help in any way with the scouts. I'm here, come to our events. I'll have a media packet, media band for you. If we can help you grow in any way, we'll be glad to help. But Ryan, you're doing great stuff with this. And Adam, I think you're killing it and what you're doing. Hopefully you're safe up there. And Brandon, JUCO as well as anybody. So keep doing what you're doing. I follow verbal commits on a daily basis, keeping up with the offers, what you're doing with the program. I don't know how the hell you're doing it, but you're doing some great stuff with the graphics and what you're doing. So appreciate you guys having me on, and hit me anytime.
Thank you, Kevin. Brandon?
Well, I appreciate you having me on, man. This was cool. I texted you as we're talking here saying, hey, this is fantastic. Like this is cool to get some conversations going and things like that. We're always just trying new stuff. Call me anytime. He said call in early in the morning, late at night. Chris Acker, when he was at Hawaii, never knew what freaking time it was. That dude would be calling you at 3 o'clock in the morning my time. I'm like, you're in Hawaii, man. You're like 5 hours behind me. Like, get your life in order. We go internationally. We do a ton of FIBA stuff. Work in that level as well as the JUCO space, obviously, and up in Canada and just kind of trying always to do new things. So, if you ever have questions, yes, we have a service, but also, you have questions or anything like that. I love connecting people. I love helping coaches find new ways to be creative in their recruiting and scouting and things like I talked about earlier. So just give me a shout and we'll see what we can do to help.
Guess that leaves. Guess that means it's my turn. Well, thank you guys for Ryan. Thank you for having me. Thank you everybody for being patient with me while I kind of navigated this technology thing. I appreciate Ryan, as you mentioned, you and I had never really connected prior to this week, but as soon as that graphic went up, everybody told me how great your platform was and how much I was going to enjoy this, and they were 100% right. So, appreciate you having me. And just to echo what these guys have said, anything I can do to help anybody, I think for the most part, I think most of the people on the call, we're already in touch. But if there's anybody getting started in the business, like Dain was saying, if I can help anybody who's starting in the business, I'm more than happy to do it. And just most of all, appreciative to be included with this group. This was fun tonight.
Thanks. I just wanted to take the time to thank all 4 speakers tonight. You guys did an awesome job. Phone's been blowing up during the whole deal. Just impressed by all of you guys' different perspectives on the landscape of recruiting right now. So I just wanted to take the time to say thank you to you all for speaking this evening. We're going to close things out. I'm going to leave the chat box open in case anybody wants to get any contact information that's been left in the chat box. We'll be back on next Tuesday, same time. I'm going to probably be doing a little bit more work. Our guys get in this weekend, so we'll be back to the grind of things, but we'll still be on next Tuesday.
In an interview with Axios' Jonathan Swan, Donald Trump gave us.
So, guys, I appreciate it. Thank everybody.
Thank you.
Boy, leave it up to